guys. Well, so hey, Dan, we're in your hands, and I'm just gonna walk. So the first thing is, just before we do that, Dan, before we do that, sorry, one thing. The Michigan Christian Chamber of Commerce puts this on, and what we want to do is just take a minute here at the beginning to celebrate the new companies that have come on board. And Mike, I haven't done yours yet, so we're going to do yours next time. But Sophia H&R Risk Masters is our latest member of the Michigan Christian Chamber. So here's a quick little blurb here. Every successful business knows that its people are its greatest assets, and sometimes its greatest risk. That is why Sphere H and Risk Masters exists. We help business leaders turn the chaos of human resource challenges into calm, confident control. Our firm brings together licensed attorneys and seasoned HR and risk management professionals with more than 70 years of combined experience. Based in Michigan, we partnered with companies across industries to create workplaces that are safe, compliant, and prepared for whatever comes next. At Sphere, we specialize in helping small and mid-sized employees navigate the complex world of compliance, employee relations, and legal exposure, because those are the very areas where one small mistake can lead to big costs. A recent example, a manufacturing company with 75 employees reached out because they were worried about employee-related risk. They carried liability insurance, but they didn't want to rely on it. They wanted to prevent claims before they started. Our team quickly got to work. We rewrote their job applications to shorten claim windows, created a new hire checklist to prevent onboarding issues, and delivered online anti-harassment training for every supervisor and employee. We revised their confidentiality and non-compete agreements to meet current legal standards, updated the employee handbook to reflect the new federal and state requirements, and added Social Security privacy policy. We also reviewed job descriptions for overtime compliance, clarified wage and hour clarifications, and sat in on monthly executive meetings to guide proactive HR and risk management. Within months, the company saw measurable improvements in employee morale and accountability, and they maintained a zero claim record for the year, saving money, stress, and reputation. That's what we do best, turning potential risk into proven confidence. So that's our latest company on board. It's called Sphere H and Risk Masters, and that's them. Okay, cool. Dan, we're in your hands, and we want to begin by saying you have 10 minutes to tell us who Dan is. Go.
What total time we have on the call again? I know you sent me an agenda. I apologize. You want me to talk for 35 minutes?
No, we've got you till just before 11 o'clock, but we've broken you up into 10 minute block.
Yeah, a little bit about who I am, and just a sidebar. That last group you just described, I'm a firm believer. You want to fix business anywhere, start giving grants for accounting, legal, and admin services.
Yeah,
that's the smartest solution. So what a great addition to the chamber up there.
Yeah.
You know, guys, I'm thrilled to be on the phone call today, and I'm thrilled that you guys would anybody would gather to hear my mouth spit words out. And I'm thankful to be here today. And those who know me know I have a unique, cherished feeling for every minute I get to spend on this planet. And so, some of the names, I think one or two of these I'd met not too long ago, possibly at a different event I shared, where we talked about when things get tough out there. And so when folks ask who I am, they usually start with the fact that 6 years ago I was diagnosed with early onset Parkinson's. And my world changed very quickly. At that point in time, I was the CEO of a defense company and traveled quite a bit around the globe, thinking that I was ready to take on the world and be a good guy in a challenging game. And fast forward to today, and God's grace, I spent, after that diagnosis, I stepped down. I'll take a step back. I stepped down from that role as CEO of that company that we have, and just began looking at life. And what occurred in my case is it was quite unique in that that case was progressing very quickly, which meant it was atypical or something else was causing it. And so I basically advanced it at about 50 years old into a late stage Parkinson's case. So I was supplementing 120% of my dopamine to be able to walk and talk, and had stepped down from all active roles in business that I was participating in and boards, and just said, okay, God, you promised to use me wherever I am. And so he did. After about 6 months of laying in bed, letting doctors try to figure out what was happening, he spoke to me pretty clearly and said, "Get up and go." And so we got up, and I started volunteering in about every ministry I could find. And that's how I met this wonderful group of folks here. In that process, fast forward to today, 1 year ago, I was about to jump on a plane and head to Colombia for stem cell treatment to see if there was anything that could save my life. I had just finished up at Mayo Jacksonville, where I was given a Pauline speech from my Christian physician. And they said, "Dan, go suffer for God and tell the world what you want to tell them." I thought, okay, that sounds great, but I just felt in my heart that wasn't how God wanted me to do this. 3 days later, I was introduced to a Christian clinic, integrated medicine clinic in Nashville, Tennessee. And in that period of time, I was actually correctly diagnosed. I had lead poisoning, not Parkinson's. Lead poisoning did indeed give me Parkinson's for all practical purposes. It also killed my immune system for the last 4 years. And so we have worked to rebuild that. And here I am today. We've taken on another challenge in where we're going. I figured if God was going to give me the strength to get up every day, I might as well do something with it. And the last time
Hey,
yes,
Dan, I remember you saying that at about that time you literally were at a point where you really couldn't get out of bed, where it was you were so struggling to even just be
yeah,
alive, because
yeah,
like contrast for me is just so remarkable seeing on the screen. So remind us of that season, just when you literally were saying this is the end.
yeah. I can remember. I can remember literally laying there one morning and having a conversation with my wife, and I shared with her. I said, I don't believe I'm ready to give up, but my body is no longer fighting, and I don't know how much longer my body's going to hang on. And at that point, I was bedridden. I still end up in a wheelchair pretty often, and usually every time I fly, we're not sure quite yet why. It may be something to do with the barometric pressure, but what occurred in that moment is absolutely correct. What you brought up, Ronnie, was I got to a place where physically my body was giving out. My brain was no longer working properly. And there goes my youngest daughter out the door. So at that moment in time, I realized, okay, it might be time to start preparing for what's next. And for us, that meant we had to start having conversations as to whether or not I would be here at this point. And I mean, guys, this is as recent as Christmas of last year. We weren't sure if I was ever going to walk again or live to the new year. And so here we are today. My immune system is coming back slowly but surely. We've been detoxing my body of lead, and what we found at this wonderful clinic is that I have a genetic mutation that wouldn't allow my body to detox properly. So being the CEO and owner of a ammunition and munitions plant, we had factories around the US and throughout the world, and we're helping figure some things out. And I realized, oh my goodness, I'm not a Superman. I don't wear a cape. That was the first realization. And secondly, I had to walk into this journey of saying, okay, if I am giving my life back, what does that look like? And that's the journey where I just woke up and went, okay, God, you're a big God. You're a real big God. So a year prior to that, I was introduced to a pastor out of Ogden, Utah, that plants inner city churches, does wild things like buys strip clubs and turns them into churches, and baptizes 16 of those employees in the next 3 years in that facility, and put together $1 million revocation fund for that whole group. And point being, he's as crazy as I am. And he came forward, and we were introduced to fix a problem in the world. And that problem was the problem with early childhood education in America and the abandonment of our children that exists today. And so we said, you know what? If we're going to be given the strength, then let's go forward and reclaim what is most important to us. You ask any parent on this planet what's most important to them, they will tell you it should be God's children. Most of them will tell you their children. And I understand that love. It is an agape kind of love. But yet we turn our children over today for 8 hours a day, or sometimes 9 or 10, to a group of people who are regulated by the government and not allowed to love on our children the proper way or introduce them to what I believe is the most important part of a child's life, an early introduction to Jesus Christ.
Hey, Dan, tell us quickly, how were you introduced to Jesus?
Oh boy, I was saved by rock and roll. I was raised in the Catholic Church, in a non-English speaking Catholic church, and so I didn't really understand much of my relationship with my Creator at that point in my life. For whatever reason, led me there. My wife and I were getting ready to start a family, and she said, "I've got an idea." She said, "We need to," and just so we're clear, I married up 27 years ago. But they had said, just so we're clear, I really believe we've got to raise our family with a relationship with Christ. And I knew Christ. I grew up with Jesus in my life. I didn't walk with him much of my life, the youngster. I'd lived on my own since I was 16, started work at 13, and decided I had it figured out. And during that journey, God showed me there's a whole different path. So he showed me into a walk with him in a relationship. And that relationship started with walking into a little strip club with about 60 folks. Fast forward, there's about 8 campuses and over 9,000 people showing up to that little strip mall church around the state of North Carolina. But what we found that day was a family, and a family that was willing to walk in life and a journey that I didn't quite know was shared by most people who had a relationship with Christ. And so it changed my life forever. I became a part of that church and continued focusing on ministry from that day forward.
How old were you then? What that life phase was?
What's that?
How old were you at that stage? Like, where were you in the?
26 years old. I was 26 years old when I gave my life back to Jesus. And then I'll tell you, my life is a story of many second chances. It's probably why I started a company called Mulligan Industries. I also then ran into that other thing called life. I think it was about 30 years old, and I was running a large company in Silicon Valley and building out Silicon Valley, doing about 1,000 construction projects a year, and found myself one day talking with my wife, who explained to me that she thought I might be addicted to alcohol. And I thought, alcoholic, what does that even mean? I entertain Fortune 200 on a weekly basis. That's part of my job. Well, needless to say, by about midnight that night, I ended up in the ER and found out I was indeed an alcoholic. And by the grace of God, I was freed from that 12 years ago, this next February. And I thank him for that. And I learned very quickly in my journey, guys and gals that are on this call, that we weren't meant to do all this on our own. And when we get to a place where we understand what meekness really means, not weakness, but meekness, power under control, as leaders throughout this country and business and the lives that most rely on and live on to put food on, in the companies to put food on their tables as a place of employment or a place to serve. We really could benefit from some more intentionality on this side of the team as to how we represent who we are, why we are, and what motivates us each and every day. And when we do that, led by grace and mercy at the helm of the love that he shared with us, that we get to share with others, something magical occurs. And I get, if I'm up with my 10 minutes, I'll jump into the next round, if that's all right.
Well, okay, so just build some gaps for us. Okay, so you're Fortune 200, you're in Silicon Valley. How does that go from there into military and armament and global? You just link us with some steps.
You got it. I'll walk you into the rest of that wacky journey. So in most eyes, I'm about 185 years old in startup years, folks. I'm a Silicon Valley kid that now lives on a farm in Tennessee. So I am what some would call a startup. I'm just a startup guy for hire, really, is what it comes down to, with a passion for Jesus. And so, as that was most of my career, rolling in and out of business to either launch or turn around, I've had quite a unique career. I think I've done launches myself in about 14 industries, including this one we've jumped in today. And then as I went through this journey in Silicon Valley construction, I found myself really plagued with this challenge of, okay, I've got to stop drinking. And I did very quickly. I realized this is not what God has for me, and life had gotten away. And through that challenging journey, he carried us out the other side. And I showed up one day to an $800 million indirect procurement budget with a Fortune 100 that was a client of ours. And I didn't walk in with my $4,000 suit that day. I walked in with my 1995 Jesus Wear T-shirt, my armor T-shirt on, and my blue jeans and my flip flops and a ball cap. And as you could imagine, walking in, it was I believe Valent Corp was buying Applied Materials, so a $9 billion transaction that IBM was overseeing, and our role was involved in an $800 million budget they had. And they said, Dan, casual Wednesday? I said, no, I just thought I'd share a little more about who I am today. You guys have brought me here to figure out some big problems for you, and I felt comfortable enough today to just walk in what I am and who I am. And I said, but I'm ready to get going if you are. Well, two of those executives, by the way, one came back to Christ after that day, and another found as a result of that. It took a few lunches and a couple long cups of coffee, but it was amazing. That was a lesson in my life when I learned and realized so many times as a CEO or the president of a company, I was asked to uphold a standard that I realized today was probably not obtainable or achievable long-term to maintain. And that standard, one that the world set upon me, rather than being a human, it elevated me very quickly, put me in a big office and said, now you're different than everybody else. From that day forward, I decided to run companies a little different, that I had a finger on, and that God would allow me to lead and walk with. And I just decided at that point, it was time to walk in business as I would at home, as I would at church. It'd be the same person at all three of those places. And something magically happened when I did that. I'm a kind of Philippians 4 guy that needs a rule book. So I was thankful when God kind of gave me that chapter to say, hey, check it out. Here's all you got to do. All you got to do is look at me first and be thankful. All right, that sounds good. I could start there. Then he says, okay. And then next, I need you to pray about everything. Well, that's a level of intention, guys and girls, that I don't know if we all walk with today, because there are many things that take us from that. But I took that piece and went, okay, I can be intentional. I've led a lot of businesses, and when I need to, I can get pretty focused. And I thought, well, okay, we'll go down that path. And then right after that, I realized, well, what does he say next? He says, well, and what's important, because for folks like me, I can be a little slow and a little thick-headed. He said, well, what's important now is that you do this right as you keep going. And what he says by doing that is, he says, now that you've submitted to me and you've turned to me for all that you are, all that you will be, and you're praying and serving up all of your matters to me, here's what I want you to do. And he gives me a rule book when I get lost. He says, slow down and start focusing on those things that I've taught you, those things of heaven, and those things of good repute.
So good.
Amazing. When you walk into that world, things start changing in the morning. I used to wake up every morning riddled with the hundreds of things I didn't get done the day before, and the hundreds of emails that are still in my inbox, and the hundreds of tasks that I know will probably not get done the next day, but we're going to take a swipe out. And today I wake up with one thing: gratitude. Amazing. When we start with gratitude, when we rise in the morning, something magical begins. It's like good. In rhythm says, it's showtime. Let's do it. Because we're reminded where our place in this world is. And when there's less of self in that rise and a little more of him and those that we care about, something magical just starts happening. It's infectious, it's contagious, and it's real. And I would argue it's even quantifiable. I see it in businesses and I get to walk in those journeys with business owners in our own companies. And though it isn't without its pitfalls, right? We still forget sometimes that in those fruits of the Holy Spirit, that one piece that says long suffering, we skip over that one every once in a while. But there are journeys and seasons in this path. But what I found as I started running through businesses, people kept asking me to lead things with them and walk with them in a leadership role. And I spent most of my life trying to conform to what I thought that role looked like. And at one point in that journey, I had to pause and ask my creator what his role was for me in this journey. He kept putting me in these positions, not man, not company. And so I started asking him, well, you got me here. Now what are we going to do? And I started taking on a new partner at that point in my business. And as I started chasing that journey, my life just started changing in miraculous ways. Since then, I've had the privilege of launching industries in many segments, whether that's the renewable energy industry with a $180 billion merchant bank and the founding CFO of Apple to fund renewable power around the globe, or whether it's a construction company in Silicon Valley and Fortune 200 tech, or whether it's a small gym to help a friend in our local community of 25,000 people. Business became a place that I found God would use me in my ministry and his, and where I feel comfortable. It's what I know. It's what I learned. As I got sick, I lost much of my brain's ability to communicate and deal with emotion, deal with challenge or situational difficulties. I lost much. I tell people I kind of became the Mad Hatter, if you will, and later we found out why. I had an infection that was caused from the condition of my depleted immune system that the lead caused. And so here we are. Forward. Is that me or was that reverb?
That was me. That was me. Sorry.
That was pretty good. I didn't know you were a DJ too.
No, I wasn't even touching anything, man.
That was smooth. No, so there we went. I started living out my faith in my career and those I encountered, and I made a decision that everybody I encounter is going to hear something about what I believe. And
well, say it again. Say it again. I love that. One more time.
Yeah, I just everybody I met, I don't even remember what I said actually, Rodney. Something about believe and share everybody I encounter. No, I had somebody I met when I was waiting tables in college 40 something years ago. And I used to ask people all the time questions who had money. I'd ask them questions and I'd say, hey, I'm a young college student. I want to take on the world. I'm a first generation college kid and I want to graduate from here. And I was told if anybody else can do it, I can do it too. And he looked at me and he said, I said, now, if you have any advice for a young man like me, what would it be? And he said, cash is king. And secondly, learn one thing from every person you meet, good or bad. Oh. And I took that to heart. So I started learning a lot from people. I started reading people and understanding people and caring about people. And that's what you do when you start listening to people. And so I started applying that to my life and realized when I went through some of those challenges I discussed a moment ago, I had forgotten two things. One was intentionality in my walk and what was most important, because it's amazing as work gets busier. It's amazing how familiarity breeds contempt. Our family is typically the first one to suffer, and then our creator follows right behind. And we start realizing that we're the ones that can get it done. In many cases, I'm not saying that's this call's circumstances, but that's the reality that I encounter across America with thousands of business owners that I get to be around and deal with and spend life with. And so as we go through that journey, I realized, okay, I'm a little bit different. I realized that. And I realized that God was putting me in places that if I was going to be intentional and I was learning things, I realized that I had this piece when I was going through these challenges that I hadn't let go of. And I used to call myself a 99%er. I was 99% in, but I kept that 1%, that piece in my pocket that in an emergency, I'd pull out as like my superhero get out of jail card. And I could do this now. There was always that one piece that I kept relying on myself in. And I guess I could be stubborn enough that he finally just broke me in that, to the point of, as you mentioned, Rodney, I couldn't walk. I could barely talk. My physical state without a dopamine medication is paralyzed, basically. So I can no longer walk on my own without medication for long. It's a humbling reminder, because I can dance like an MC Hammer backup dancer if I had to for about 5 minutes. I get with the medication. So do that every once in a while too, because we can. And in our home, we now say that often, because we get to, not because we do, because we get to become intentional. I decided, okay, God, I took it upon myself to grow myself by this world and learn something from everybody I met. But what am I called to do? Only two things, folks. Love him with all I am and my neighbor the same. And then go tell somebody about it. Well, so I just decided, all right, I'm going to put that same intentionality. I don't know, and my kids can attest this. My wife says we have many more dinners planned next week than there are slots for dinner in the week. And I said, that's because everywhere I go, I want to break bread and I want to learn a little something about somebody. And so when we say we travel at Mulligan Industries, my partner Matt and I say it simply put, and we didn't come up with this, but some old philosophizer did. And he said, our heart is to share the gospel with all we encounter. And when that's not enough, we start using words. So we decided, as I was not doing too well physically yet, that my partner and I said, what did God put us together for? He said, I never met Business Dan and CEO Dan. I only met Pastor Dan. He said, so if in your current state, you'd like to keep sharing the gospel, I'd like to walk with you. And so we did. And we began with this crazy concept that after starting a nonprofit and asking a bunch of people for money, and I have helped more than 14,000 nonprofits create fundraising programs and earn incomes through different efforts of business that I've had around the globe at times. And I'll tell you one thing that I've learned is I build businesses a lot better than I ask people for money. And so developing sustainable charitable models that are attached to for-profit entities that actually manage and succeed in economic environments and build economic environments and models and paradigms as leaders of markets, I found that we're starting to make impact and impasse. And I think that's probably a good segue. And I appreciate, guys, just so you're clear, you'll find humble is something that I eat a lot of pie of every day. So Rodney, you keep me on track, buddy. One of the things that you lose Parkinson's is your executive function. I don't know if y'all know what that means, but I basically have ADHD like you've never seen before now. And so I get to surround myself with a lot of brilliant, organized individuals, and I'm thankful. So thank you.
Melissa has a quick question for you.
Yeah.
Question for you. If you
Sure.
were originally diagnosed with Parkinson's and you found out it was lead poisoning, have you helped the medical community with, you know what I mean?
Oh, yes. You could imagine.
Like looking for lead poisoning if they have symptoms of Parkinson's, you know?
So indeed worked. I almost bought a neurology center last year. So I've been working with Vanderbilt, their head of neuro ICU, Jim Jackson, who's about to release a book this year called The Acquired Brain Injury. What we've learned about Parkinson's is the body's inability. It's an autoimmune disorder caused by the body's inability to process proteins properly. Ends up in a very, very scary place when you can't get that dopamine protein or amino to your brain. It controls all of your movement and function. So what we learned is many people, until 2 years ago, the root cause of Parkinson's wasn't even a consideration of understanding. And today we can image what are called alpha-synuclein acids, dopamine refined for the brain. And we can image those. And what we have found is, yes, there are many genetic and environmental influences that typically cause Parkinson's. So I began working with a neurology center and an integrated medicine center out of North Tennessee in a place most people know as a nuclear power facility called Oak Ridge. Oak Ridge has 9,000 plus individuals that are suffering from Parkinsonian symptoms right now. It was our neurology's team at that time's assessment. Most of those individuals do not have Parkinson's. So not only have we, in different capacities, stepped into the study of what was overlooked, and that's a bigger conversation. I think we have an opportunity, and I'll share more about the healthcare advancements that we're making in our current efforts. But to answer your question, yes. So I believe firmly that as a country, we have lost sight of how to care for ourselves. Both pharmaceuticals and insurance have dictated that. And I mean, guys, I sit with teams of neurologists who weep in tears, believers that taught in classrooms that opioids would never be addictive if you had pain. That's what our neurologists, the smartest doctors in America, were taught to teach and train our country. So when we wonder how this pandemic started, there's no more question in that question. And so How then do we proceed forward in that? And I'll tell you, to answer that question and jump back on task, is we began by first saying, is there a root cause we can assess that the system does not look at? And the answer is yes. As a country, we no longer look at the biology of a human being nor the holistic body and mind. Because of laws, insurance malpractice, and money, we bifurcated and licensed our medical field into a segmented, compartmentalized structure that is no longer incentivized to heal sick. It's incentivized to placate or prescribe to manage symptomology. And that is a hamster wheel that I don't believe should continue. So yes, we, not to stay on my soapbox, but yes, ma'am, we are stepping in the midst of that. Wholeheartedly, full swing ahead. So we are working on really neat efforts, and I'll describe that in just a minute when I tell you about our current run in business and what we're doing.
Yeah, well, because I'm worried about the time. We've got about 20 minutes, and I'd love to know if you got a chance to talk to Michael J. Fox. But anyway, let's keep moving, because I really want to hear about your current project that has got you moving into, because I feel like that could be quite exciting for these crew to hear. And then the last couple of minutes, I want to inspire these business leaders and people as we head out of here. But let's talk about it.
Yeah. So where all that led us? January of this year, guys, I walked again. I woke up the following morning after some pretty invasive autoimmune treatments, and I took a trip to the facilities in my master bedroom on my own. It sounds trivial, but that was a big day. I started walking, and we were excited. I called my wife and explained like I was 3 years old. But so from that day forward, my immune system started working again. And Matt and I looked at each other. I said, okay, God has still continued moving this business and venture forward. And this business and venture is, we were brought together to fix early childhood education. So we started a company called True North Kids. True North Kids started as a consulting firm to empower the church across America in building early childhood education and profitable early childhood education facilities. What we realize in this country right now is 70% of Americans left the church, young families, after COVID. And that's a Barna statement, not mine. So 70% of the young families in the church in America are no longer attending church on Sunday. And that is the scariest statistic we saw. And having inner city ministries all over the globe, we realized that in our efforts, we do a lot of funerals with a lot of adults and children. But what we also realize is we get to see the joy of salvation that comes with a life that is introduced to Jesus Christ and a relationship's formed. And we learned very early on that the statistics say that maybe 1 out of 8, 1 out of 10 addicts, criminals are going to make it out of that journey, even with the most valiant effort and submission. And so in that journey, we realized the children of those individuals are our tomorrow. And if we're going to end what I call generational bad, some call it generational curses, we've got to step in and look at our most valuable asset in this country. We have turned them over to a government that is no longer motivated by programming and care for the individual. They're motivated by REITs, real estate investments, and the investment community at Wall Street, and how that community props up these efforts and gives statistics of outcome. We look at that and said, maybe there's a different way. So we started a consulting group. Our mission was to empower the country of churches that we work with each year. Each year we do about 25 seminars around the country with a group, an architectural firm named Building God's Way, and 43 regional and national builders. Over the last decade, we've built about 1,300 churches as a group and schools across America. We took that effort and said, hey, we've been equipping everyone else to build childcares. And there was a huge, huge burden in that market. One of the things that we figured out together when assessing the childcare industry was it was not investable by the institutional markets. And what I mean by that is when we subsidize childcare, we subsidize about 68% of tuition. That 68% is non-recourse against the family as well, or the delta from that and 100% of the tuition. what that leads to is a systemic break in markets and investable markets, because what it leads to is we realize that the margin is always going to be blended as a result of that and will never be optimized. So the margins in childcare are quite awful, candidly. And so what we said is we've either got to fix that paradigm, because right now the largest in that space are real estate companies. That's what they do. And therefore programming is not the top of their mind. Seats, rear ends in a seat is how that industry is managed today, vacancies versus filled seats. So we stepped in and said, well, what happens if we start removing the barriers to the church? The church has 7.5 million acres of unused land around the US. We've worked with large denominations in some of the recent separations or divorces, I like to call them, that we've seen. Some of those issues come up with challenges like we have $2.5 billion of real estate and we can't afford to maintain it. What do we do? Right? So separations like that, as trivial as they may end up being after the news quits staring at them, they're going to affect this country for a long time. And so we started seeing these challenges come about. We started seeing these opportunities in our relationships around the US with land and facilities that were being unused. And we said, what if we empower the church and we fund it too? And what happens if we build institutional solutions at a scale that is that of our God? And the reason that came about is I started working with a private equity firm and this crazy British guy. And this crazy British guy had a lot of enterprise experience in business. And he came forward one day and said to me, of all people, and my partner, Matt, in this business, who don't often hear the words, you're not thinking big enough. But this crazy Brit looked at us one day after we had told him, we've come up with an idea. We're going to build a family care brand. And we're going to introduce that family care brand to churches and these schools and our students and the families in these schools. And we're now working with groups like Procter & Gamble to build out this family care brand of services, and groups of some of the largest individual benefit providers in the world have come forward and said, we want to help you care for these families. And we said, well, here's how we care for them. It starts with Jesus. And when we start with Jesus, we start with a foundation in these homes. It means we express that we care diligently, not just about that child, but the whole family. Because school is something that we show up to do. Caring for each other is something that we're called to be, right? And so as we started looking, we said, can we take purpose and profits and put them into one bucket and make something fun? And ultimately, this guy looks at us and says, that's a great idea you guys have there. That's gonna boost the childcare market by 18 to 24%. That's a big step up in outcomes. And I thought, well, yeah, I was bowing up a little bit, get ready to get my Jesus wear back out, and let everybody know how good I did for him. And then he looked at me and says, but Dan, I need you to put your big boy pants on and think a little bigger. And I thought, well, that's kind of cheeky, as they'd say. I thought, well, I don't hear that every day. Yeah, right. Normally it's put your seatbelt on and keep your hands and feet in at all times. But he challenged us. He said, I'm working on a project now in technology, and I think it fits your model in a very wacky, weird way. And I said, well, let's talk about it. I like wacky and weird. We embrace that in my house. My kids have carried me out of enough restaurants in the last 5 years that we're all right with weird. And I said, he says, we're doing this micro edge quantum AI data center project. And I paused and I started adding up the acronym, the adjectives. And I said, I don't even know what all that means. And I've got a pretty good background in technology. I said, but I have a feeling what you're saying is you've got some pretty cool tech you're bringing to market. And they said, we are. They said, would you be interested in marrying these two business models? So sure enough, we did. We took purpose and profit data centers and daycares, as I say it. Anybody from the industry would shun on that. But that's what we did. And we decided that we can build sustainable childcare models, but we also realize that if institutions can't invest in the regions that need these centers most, we are not transforming a country, we're separating it still. And so we decided that all children deserve a relationship with Christ and a proper equipping for what will set their path academically into the rest of their scholastic or academic and career future. And so to do so, we decided we would take and build two models at the same time. So we build data centers and daycares. We build quantum edge micro data centers. We have a company named LandLink that we're launching as of next week, actually. We go live with that venture. Our effort at this point is to build out $1.8 billion of data centers across America next year. In doing so, we mitigate a lot of these issues that are being faced today in the world with data, and this weird conundrum that we all love to ask Siri how to get somewhere. That takes anywhere from 10 to 500 times the amount of power and energy to compute that answer as it did just a year ago without Siri having an AI backbone. And so where do we find that compute and data capability and storage and management? It comes through data centers, these big giant buildings that everybody's yelling at and throwing stones at today. They're absolute hogs of resource, and they cause a lot of problem right now in zoning and power planning and a lot of different areas in the US. So we decided, once again, if we lead our business and all that we do with thinking about others first, we're going to end up on the right path. And so we stepped back and said, okay, the data center industry is struggling, but these folks have a solution. And this solution is micro mobile advanced compute data centers. So we deploy what I would call these micro data centers. We call them community impact pods all over the country. Our first project is being launched in Hickory, North Carolina. We're deploying our first $150 million site. That $150 million, the crazy part, fits in 9 containers. So we're now poised to build out about 600 or 700 of those sites around the US is our long-term objective here. And in doing so, we're creating, I guess, one of the largest community impact programs and funding models that the US has privately seen in a long, long time, at least in the range of one being built for Jesus. And so we plan on giving about $3 billion a year through that program over the next 5 years. And so it's a big, audacious task. I wake up every single morning. Our partners in this are weird tier 1 big names like NVIDIA, Dell, Procter and Gamble, personnel like friends of the presidents of the world's largest renewable energy company, the current chief investment officer of the 4th largest bank in the world. The list keeps going on. Fox show anchors. We've got multiple that have stepped forward and want to jump into this to ultimately say that we will be not just building data centers and daycares, but chasing a movement across this country. We'll be formalizing structured financial investments, ETFs, and other structured products that we can deliver to consumers, churches, church members, and individuals across the country that believe this country is a great place, that believe this country is a place where we can step up in capitalism in a free market and make a decision as business owners to be cheerful givers. That's the difference between capitalism and socialism. Socialism, we are forced to do something that in many cases, a business may not be equipped to do. In capitalism, that is built on a moral foundation that we call the Bible, we walk lockstep in hand, or whatever that statement is, and we get to walk forward and make decisions to take percentages of our business, not because greed is why we chase the almighty dollar to serve our shareholders. When did any time, we've got a room full of business owners, when did we wake up and say the only thing to do in this business is generate money? Find me anybody on this phone call that woke up this morning and said, my only purpose is to generate money. That's not why we're awake. It's not why we're alive. And it's not why we're doing what we're doing. It's a means. It is a means to an end. And our end is to serve our Creator. Our purpose is simple, and we walk. I cannot tell you how many CEOs and executives of businesses that I get to hang out with that tell me, I mean, in tears, how lonely they are, how lost they are, how difficult life has become at the top. And I remind them, you ought to just figure this out. I had to learn it the hard way. I had to be forced to the bottom to realize that's not the worst place to be. And what I found at the bottom is He'll use me the greatest. He'll use me in every moment, in every circumstance I encounter. And as long as I walk that bottom with gratitude and intentionality every day, looking back at him, remembering what my purpose is, the top isn't what I aspire to be. The top may be where we end up. As you hear the numbers we're throwing around, those are very large numbers. In society's definition, that identity would say, by what the society wants to put on me, they're going to say very clearly, yes, Dan, you are at the top. You guys have a giant business you're launching. That's fantastic. To launch a multi-billion-dollar business in less than 12 months, amazing. The reality is that just means I have a lot more debt and partners than most would realize. What it means is we've been given a clear path to go serve our God. And what we had to do in that path was meet all of the institutional world. We had to give Caesar what was Caesar's. In all my life, in all of these businesses I've had the privilege of being a part of, I have never built a financial model that I couldn't break until then. And we thought, goodness, at $85 billion in annual revenue, I looked at our C-suite and I said, guys, I can't break it. Find me people who can break this model. That's my next challenge. And so we did. And that's when we started working with some of those big individuals in business. And they kept coming back and we kept finding believers out there. I call them closet believers. They're not quite ready to join the Michigan Chamber, but they will. They will soon get. Hey, I'll tell you a wonderful, as soon as we're talking Michigan, I'll give you a little insight on Michigan. I'll give you, this is how God works. I'm going to share a quick testimony, and whether it's inspiring or not, you're going to get to hear it. One of the largest manufacturers and distributors of marijuana in the state of Michigan happens to be a dear friend of mine. That dear friend I met prior to him coming to faith. And about a year ago, that dear friend came to me and he said, I have a problem. I said, oh yeah. He said, I have funded hundreds of millions of dollars in research, in built neurology centers at more than one facility now in this state. And he said, I'm gonna have to change what I do. And I paused and y'all, I'm one of those that I have no problem what God said about storing up the wealth of the wicked and using it for the righteous. And so I thought,
Amen,
well,
brother.
take money either way, right? I'm in. But what are you trying to say to me? And he says, my wife and I have been talking, and Dan, I need to leverage or sell all of this. And I want to spend it all on Kingdom. And oh, holy, well, you probably got a little bit going on up there. I said, what do you think it's worth? He gave me a number. I thought, wow, that's life-changing. That's a big deal. And it was a pretty big number. It was tens of millions of dollars. I thought, wow, that's big. Do you know 2 weeks after, a breakthrough was made in one of those centers that he had paid for to build? And that breakthrough is a pretty big deal in the brain and the studies that we're doing today of the human mind. In a very large group came forward and said, we'd like to buy that breakthrough in all of your business and its research and every element of it. So my friend came back to me after he made this decision. He said, Dan, I have a problem. I said, what? Remember that number I gave you? Yeah, it's about 50 times that. And overnight, this wild friend of mine became a billionaire. Wow. And he sat there, and on a drive up to meet with the lawyers, he was making trips back and forth. It was 3 a.m., and he was driving down the road quite tired. He fell asleep at the wheel. All along to wake up, the last thing he remembered was the rumble strip. And then he met our Creator. And he says, there I was. And at that point in time, he would be what I call somebody who wasn't quite sure what he believed. And I got a call about 10 minutes after that occurrence from a weeping grown man who could barely speak, who could barely talk. And he said, I met him. That's all he could say. And I said, who did you meet? And he sucked up enough wind in his lungs to spit it out in the midst of his quivering, his lip quivering. For those of you who don't know, Parkinson's patients get a lot of lip quivering. So we notice it when somebody else is. And he just stumbled through in his words and he said, I met Jesus. And he showed me grace. He said, Dan, I didn't get to see his face. This is a man who hasn't read the Bible. He says, I didn't get to meet his face. But I woke up after hearing the rumble strip but I don't know if I was awake. And he said, all I remember is the warmth and my car going back into the middle of the road. And I remember seeing the outline of what looked like a shadow and an individual that just had their hand laid out. And all I remember is this overwhelming warmth and comfort in the moment. And I've been sitting here weeping for 10 minutes trying to call you.
Mm.
Know what it is? I felt God's grace for the first time in my life.
Wow.
And
wow.
so I started crying. As you can imagine, those of you who don't know, dopamine is both a neurotransmitter and a hormone. So I'm making crying cool again. And so sure enough, we wept. We wept like little kids, which is innocence. And that man has faced so many crazy challenges since he's made that decision. It's 5 books and a movie waiting to happen, but he's on the right path.
Oh
and
my goodness.
So when I walk guys in this journey, look, I tell people all the time, leave some room for Jesus in your decisions, in your day, and make sure that you're intentional about that, to ask him to be there in it. Because as we go forth in this world, I can't tell you what your business is going to do tomorrow, but I can promise you, if you make the right decision, what you're going to do tomorrow. And
That's good.
first step toward walking in a Christ-centered business. I asked a group of executives the last time I got to speak with y'all, and that goes back a year or two. I was looking at my calendar. Boy, I did go down for a while. But as Donald Trump and Eminem said this year, I'm back.
Dan, thank you so much.
Yeah.
We got to end here, and I know that, I mean, wow, you ended with an exclamation mark there. If you wouldn't mind, and I always try to honor the time for these guys because they've got to jump back into their schedules here. Would you mind praying for our team? I think that what I come out of this time, I mean, I've written a page of notes. I can't even go back to them all, but just to say that maybe the prayer for the guys is just in the connection of how you ended, is like living each day, intentionally. Being a witness. I love what you said there, because you said literally sharing the gospel with every encounter. I love that. And so maybe that is a prayer for our team here, or whatever God lays in your heart. If you want to round us off in prayer.
Yeah, you bet. Hey, and I always ask this: if there are any specific felt needs, y'all, that are rising out there, go ahead and throw them forward too. Let's lift them up. So Lord, here we are again, as we come before you humbly in awe and adoration. You cease to amaze me with your grace, your mercy, and your love. It's as often as I try to mess up, you keep picking me up and dusting me off, and I thank you for that. And today I thank you for this group of friends that you have introduced me to, and I thank you for this introduction today, and I thank you for this chance to speak and today on your behalf, Lord. And I thank you for that blessing and that opportunity. And I pray that if the words that you shared with me today to share with this group reach someone, that, Lord, you will nurture and water it, that you will walk, that you will make yourself known in this moment, not me, but you, Lord. And in each of these lives, Lord, I ask, as they go forward, that you equip every one of these individuals with the strength, the knowledge and wisdom to apply your will to those they encounter. And Lord, as leaders, may we walk boldly in the peace and comfort of the knowledge of you in our lives. And what that means is we carry that knowledge forward to those we encounter with intentionality, with diligence, and with urgency, Lord. As I have learned, this journey is fragile, as we have seen entire global societies crumble in days, not years, in weeks, not months, to only have you, Lord, today at the helm. As we walk across this country, I see revival. As we see across this world, Lord, I see revival in you. What an amazing opportunity to remember you are the author of this book. You are the author of our lives, and you are the author of what happens next. You granted us free choice in this journey, Lord, not so that we may become victims of this world, but, Lord, that we may survive in eternity with you. And that knowledge of salvation no one can take. So may that bring boldness in our journeys to walk. Lord, as I have heard business people conform and tell me they can't walk with you because of this world's pressures on them financially, these world's pressures on them spiritually. Lord, I ask you to break those barriers down and remind these people that you and you alone are our creator. You are omniscient, omnipotent, and always with us. May we let you in this door, and may we let you lead in all that we do. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Amen. And
Thank you all.
Dan, you're a beautiful blessing, brother. Thank you so much, and thank you guys for jumping online. Have a beautiful day, guys.
Hey, and feel free to share my contact information. If anybody'd like to talk, let me.
Definitely.
I got to get a one-on-one with you, Dan. So
I definitely would like to. I live in the medical world in a different way with my daughter, so and have been making changes there. I would love to connect with you on all that stuff.
For sure, there are a lot of wonderful things that could be done in almost any health circumstance.
Yeah.
So are you on LinkedIn, Dan?
I'm not. Well, I don't know. As you'll find, I've sat on boards with the founder of Facebook. And I was in charge of business development. You can imagine when I looked at one of the founders of Facebook and said, I don't have a Facebook account. He looked at me and said, what is wrong with you? So I do have some social media. I don't utilize any of it. So if it's out there, somebody else probably created it for me. But please, I'm a cell phone guy. Call me, text me. It rings 24 hours a day. If it's an emergency, call twice. I'll usually answer. If I don't answer the first time, please leave a message. I will get back to you. And
what would that number be?
408-318-5795. My email address is dan@truenorthkids.org.
and just so you know, Dan, that Mike Colby that just asked you the question is we were together in Israel where we got connected with Jason, which led me to my relationship with you. So that like these things just.
I was with Jason yesterday.
Did you?
2 days ago. I'm sorry. 2 days ago, I was with Jason down in Tampa. Yeah, he is doing a wonderful work with us in our school programming right now, in our marketing. I love Jason dearly, your dear friend. Yeah, it's a Jesus kind of world, huh? I don't call it small.
It is being intentional, like you said. So love it.
Yeah, and guys, we are constantly looking for businesses, partnerships, and what we're doing. And so anybody that's interested in learning more about it,
Yeah, and
call me.
the individual that I talked to you about, I'm going to use that last 20 or 25 minutes of what you talked about your business to the person that's at Coca-Cola that we talked about, our little wow moment that we had a couple weeks ago, because Procter & Gamble was part of that story, right? So
Yep.
that would be, I think, cool for Coca-Cola to know, Procter & Gamble to know, and who's in, might be a connector and all that.
Absolutely, yes. And their foundation, his daughter runs out of Chattanooga as well. So I have not met with her. So that would be a fantastic connection. Yes.
Yeah.
I'll tell you.
Let daughter.
Let's talk offline. That sounds great.
Yeah. Let's get online and talk about that.
Absolute privilege. And hey, I'll tell you this, y'all. Just for one last piece. The name of our holding company for those two ventures, LandLink and True North, is called Big Boy Pants Ventures. Walk in it, get out there and have some fun, right? I believe our Lord does have a sense of humor as well. He created the platypus, doggone it.
Have a good day, man.
Bless everybody and have a wonderful day. Thanks.
God bless you.
All right, bye.